Listen-only mode.
Welcome to our study of the Wishfulfilling Jewel, the practice of Guru Yoga according to the Longchen Yingtik tradition, Chidrup Yishin Nobu. And as always, we approach this teaching in terms of seeing how this could be something that, if we apply this, could be a very important method, tool, avenue to accomplish the dual purpose of our own liberation and also the liberation and enlightenment of others. So with this motivation, this preparation of bodhicitta, kindly listen to the teaching. So actually, some time ago when we were studying the steps to the great perfection, I was presenting some of the lineage teachers, and I thought actually that would be a nice thing to do also as we're studying this teaching here. And so I've been looking at some of the paintings that we have from Nyoshu Khyentse Rinpoche, the Dzogchen lineage, and of course the first human teacher in the Dzogchen tradition is Garab Dorje. So just very briefly on Garab Dorje. He was born in Udayana. His mother was a very devout practitioner. She was a nun. Garab Dorje was conceived in a miraculous way, and there are stories about the mother being somewhat overwhelmed at the appearance of her pregnancy. Nevertheless, Garab Dorje grew up, and he was able to receive teachings directly from Vajrasattva, and on the basis of this received the Great Perfection teachings. When he was teaching these, and this you can also read about in Words of My Perfect Teacher, there were the sort of general Buddhist scholars who objected to the teaching of the Great Perfection because it is what we call the path of no effort. It is the path that takes the result as the path, and moreover than that, it actually takes the very nature of reality as the starting point. So there were some scholars that objected to this approach, but Garab Dorje was so brilliant that he defeated it, and the foremost of these scholars, Manjushri Mitra, became his direct student. There's a very, very sweet story in I think Words of My Perfect Teacher, where he was so embarrassed that he didn't have faith in Garab Dorje right away, that he had used his tongue to question and debate Garab Dorje, that he wanted to cut off his tongue. And Garab Dorje says, that's not really going to help. And so better to do some practice than, torture yourself with cutting off your tongue, which it then says in the narrative in Dunjum Rinpoche's history. I think it says that Manjushri Mitra attended Garab Dorje for some 75 years, and he became the holder of his teaching in the human realm. But also Garab Dorje taught extensively to the Dakinis. The place where he lived, Udayana, were famous as the country of the land of the Dakinis. And upon completion of his life and work, he then transmitted these teachings to Manjushri Mitra. And we have a story of, as he passed away, then Manjushri Mitra crying out to him. Garab Dorje then reappeared and gave his final teachings, what we call the 3 words, to Manjushri Mitra. Okay, someone's saying the sound is really bad. Should be all right. Yeah. Is anybody else having difficulty with the sound? Apparently the issue resolved itself. Yeah, fine. Okay. I think it should Should be okay, no problem. Yeah, all right. I think it should be. I think it should be okay. The yeah. All right. Well, let's assume it is okay. Okay. So last time we looked at a little bit the history of the Longchen Nyingtik teaching, Jigme Lingpa's vision that founded that is the basis for the Longchen Nyingtik teaching, and also we looked at Jigme Lingpa's life, and also then Khyentse Rinpoche speaks about the role of the teacher and the value of the teacher, what we could call the bhakti, the approach of bhakti, which we might associate with Hinduism, but it's really universally that place which enables us to gauge and to connect with something that is far greater. So we ended here last time on this note where it says, to remember the Guru for a single instant is infinitely greater than to meditate for 1,000,000 kalpas on 100,000 deities. So more than the effort that we might put into all sorts of methods to simply just think of the teacher, and particularly not just teacher as an object or somebody, I wonder where he is, but more for the purpose of this deep experience of blessing. Khyentse Rinpoche continues, though the boundless compassion of Amitabha and Vajrasattva never forsakes us, due to our obscurations we cannot meet them face to face. So although there are countless Buddhas, then in their subtle forms of what we would say, the Dharmakaya and the Sambhogakaya, it's impossible for us to perceive that. We're still obscured, we're still held back by the confusion of duality. Our own teacher, however, is kinder than all the Buddhas because we can now, in this very life, meet him or her in person and receive from him the precious instructions. The great teacher Paltru Rinpoche used a simple analogy. Not all rich people in the world are equally kind. The kindest help poor people who have neither food nor sustenance. So there are countless Buddhas, but those who really matter to us, they are the ones who are there giving us the food and the sustenance of the teaching and nourishing us with their compassion, paving the way for the sustenance of their blessing. And again, while we talk about their blessing or blessing and so forth, there's a famous story actually from Atisha, where he was teaching one day and then somebody from the crowd calls out saying, "Give us some blessing." And Atisha calls back to him, "Give me some devotion." So of course, the value of the teacher is particularly proportionate to our devotion. Rinpoche says, even if we were to meet all the Buddhas in their paradises, we would not receive from them any teaching or instruction more extraordinary or more profound than those given to us by our own teacher. Nor would we, through some miracle, be lifted up from the lower realms and established in enlightenment by them, the way an aircraft lifts us into the sky. So we shouldn't count on being beamed up. We do have a culture in Vajrayana. When somebody passes, we give the name to the Lama and so forth. And we have a discourse that would say, "Oh, I'm very glad now Rinpoche is praying for my mother, for my friend, and so forth." And of course, that is valid. But ultimately, the possibility for the teacher really benefiting us is contingent on our devotion. I remember there's a line I mentioned this probably regularly, but there's a line in the introduction to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, where Shigam Trungpa says, the Guru cannot save us, but he can instigate the possibility. And I actually, for the longest time, couldn't figure out what was meant with that. But it is, of course, that, yes, the Guru is not a savior, and yet the Guru can instigate. And we, with our devotion, with that dynamic, yes, something along the lines that might look like being saved can take place. But it's essentially contingent on our devotion, because the teacher's compassion is unfailing and continual and pervasive. So it's really ultimately about our devotion. Khyentse Rinpoche says, we do not necessarily need to receive a great number of different instructions to achieve enlightenment. In fact, the 84 Mahasiddhas of India achieved realization and complete Buddhahood by meditating upon 4 verses of teachings. Meaning, some of these great accomplished masters, they only received a few lines of teachings. So that was enough. Of course, some of them also received a lot of teachings, but particularly, and some of them were great scholars and panditas and so on, but particularly the Vajrayana teaching in many cases were just a few lines of instructions. They did not go through a vast assortment of instructions, but practiced one pointedly, the very one they received. So, of course, nowadays, and in general, of course, in Tibetan Buddhism, we have a lot of teachings of what we call upadesha, pith instructions. They are readily available, and of course that's wonderful. But in fact, just focusing on just one teaching or few lines of teachings with that attitude of appreciation is the foundation for accomplishment. We also would say the Tibetans, being somewhat self-deprecatory, they would say in the old India, the teachers would meditate on one deity and attain accomplishment through that. Here in Tibet, we meditate on 100 deities and we have no accomplishment. So that, of course, is not true, but it's sort of indicative of the Tibetan humility. In the same way, when meeting the Guru, we feel complete confidence and engender strong devotion toward him. We possess the main elements to progress along the path. So, if when meeting the Guru we feel such confidence and engender such strong devotion towards him or her, we possess the main elements to progress along the path. But if we lack confidence and fervent devotion, if we're unable to perceive the Guru as the Buddha, then though we may have collected a multitude of instructions, not only will we find progress impossible, but we risk falling into the extreme deviations as did the monk Leschly or Good Star, Devadatta. This was the Buddha's cousin who, as Khyentse Rinpoche now tells us, Leschly had spent most of his life near Lord Buddha, and during that time had received an abundance of teachings. With his unfailing memory, he had learned by heart the whole of the Tripitaka. Yet because he lacked faith and had negative views towards Buddha Shakyamuni, he believed that the Buddha's deeds and teachings were no more than the scheme designed to fool people. Because of this, he cut himself off from all blessings. So I think it says somewhere that he would say, yeah, that guy over there, he's a charlatan, there's no difference between him and I. The only thing is he has that aura, but otherwise we're the same. So Devadatta actually created a lot of trouble for the Buddha. Without true devotion, even great erudition will not prevent doubts about the teacher from arising. Without true devotion, we may fall into the error of viewing the Guru's deeds in a biased way, thus cultivating a perverse attitude toward him. In the end, we may become even more deeply obscured than when we first met the teacher. And this is because we might meet somebody who is so sublime, but actually then, instead of our devotion increasing, then gradually diminishing, then we actually begin to have a jaded heart that's lacking what initially was there. That sensitivity goes away, and that's where we begin to become immune. That's where we become immune then to sublime beings. So we should be very attentive that we don't fall into the jaded category. Yeah, I've been around so many lamas, or I've seen so many of them, and I've hung out with him a lot and stuff, these kind of things, you know. Rather, his Khyentse Rinpoche says, but if we cultivate heartfelt devotion, then simply through this intense fervor, we will be liberated. So we want to make sure to not fall into the former category, and instead we want to really be continually attentive to generating devotion. We may not feel devotion from the very moment we meet the teacher, so as a means of engendering greater and greater devotion, we practice a Guru Yoga sadhana, and this is then what we're doing here, in which we perceive the teacher as inseparable from a perfect form, such as Padmasambhava, also known as Guru Rinpoche, the precious Guru. So this is where the antidote for seeing the teacher as our peer or just somebody that we hang out with or whatever is to see their pure ground, which of course is what they truly are. Their manifestation in this world is a nirmanakaya. They're not here out of just being propelled karmically, and particularly with us aspiring to enlightenment, this is the very manifestation of enlightenment in front of us. They're not ordinary, and to bring home that point, we then practice the visualization of the Guru as a deity or as Guru Rinpoche. Rinpoche says, in the beginning we may have to generate a kind of artificial devotion, a mental construct. At this point, we would meditate that our Guru is indissociable from Guru Rinpoche. So as an antidote to our ordinary perception or diminishing the Guru, then we then practice this Guru sadhana, seeing the teacher as inseparable from Guru Padmasambhava. Who, we may ask, is Guru Rinpoche? In the Dharmakaya, the absolute level, he is Buddha Wapame Amitabha. In the Sambhogakaya, the level of divine enjoyment, he is Chenrezig. In the Nirmanakaya, the level of manifestation, he is the lotus-born Guru Pema Jungne, who appeared in this degenerate age when sentient beings, obscured by the afflictions of gross negative emotions and erroneous views, are disinclined to practice the sublime Dharma. So when we in Buddhist cultures, and particularly, of course, Vajrayana culture, then want to explain Guru Rinpoche, then we do so with reference to Buddhas, which, of course, in the modern world might not exactly be what we grew up with or are familiar with. But when we say the Buddha Wapame, we're referring to the Dharmakaya, the primordial ground of awakening. And when we talk about the Sambhogakaya, this is then the qualities that arise out of that, the enjoyment body, that is the manifestation of enlightenment. And while this manifestation is innate to the nature of enlightenment as it permanently abides, then we are not sensitive to this. So we need the Nirmanakaya. In the case of Buddha Shakyamuni, we talk about the supreme Nirmanakaya, someone that manifested in this world. But we also do talk about how the enlightened nature will manifest according to different beings and different dispositions. So we would say that mainly Buddha Shakyamuni taught the gradual path, and he himself predicted then Padmasambhava, and Padmasambhava is then particular as the enlightened manifestation that appears and manifests according to the particularly gross or the sort of the particular beings who are not that easy to tame, as we would put it. And in this way, in this degenerate age, then we have Padmasambhava as someone who facilitated this difficult disposition that many sentient beings have, and made that a vehicle. And also with this, there is, as much as there is a, you could say, greater neurosis and a greater toxicity in terms of the mental disposition of sentient beings, there's also greater capacity for understanding then what predominantly was Guru Rinpoche's teachings, namely the Vajrayana, the resultant vehicle practice. So this is seen as the vehicle which is for beings with gross negative emotions, but also sharp faculties. And so Khyentse Rinpoche goes on to say, in this dark age, beings are afflicted with the three calamities of sickness, famine, and warfare. It is in such an age that Guru Padmasambhava manifested as the embodiment of all the Buddhas. He came to Tibet in the form of an Indian siddha, an accomplished master, and disclosed all the instructions to his 25 disciples, to the 80 siddhas of Yapa, and to many, many others, all of whom eventually achieved full realization. So we have the life story of Padmasambhava, which is very different from that of the Buddha. The Buddha was somebody who manifested the form that we generally associate with the general Buddhist vehicle, the form of a renunciant, whereas Padmasambhava played in the world, and his life story is that of the yogi that engages with the world. And as such, he was a great, what we call Mahasiddha, a great Vajrayana master. And his life story is extraordinary. Of course, we might have, again, this is the narrative, the style of the narrative is very different from the narratives that some of us have grown up with. Some of you who are listening in here, you had the fortune to grow up in cultures where you actually heard these teachings from a very early age, and they would make sense. So in that way, you could say you're particularly blessed. Anyway, I think everybody can understand the nature of Padmasambhava's life and liberation. And I think I referred to it before. There's one short little essay an extract from a teaching by Chögyam Trungpa that's called, it's from a chapter of Crazy Wisdom, and it's just the first section of it. It's called Padmasambhava and Primordial Innocence. So I'll upload that to the resource folder. I'm sure I referred to it before. Anyway, it was as a great Vajrayana master that he came to Tibet, and he then had the 25 disciples, mainly meditating near the monastery of Samye up in a place called Chimpu. And these 25 disciples include Yeshe Tsogyal, King Trison Detsen, Berotsana, and a number of other masters. And then also there was 80 siddhas at a place called Yapa, which is, I think, up closer to Lhasa. I haven't been there. And also, of course, many other disciples. And it's then these disciples that later reincarnated and were then holders of Padmasambhava's lineage, and many of which also then became treasure revealers, like Jigme Lingpa, who revealed the teachings of Padmasambhava according to the particular time and circumstances. We too, Khyentse Rinpoche says, in these days, through the immense kindness of Guru Rinpoche, are able to practice the teachings of the secret Mantrayana vehicle. In order to generate the perception of our teacher as being one with the lotus-born Guru, we should generate from the core of our heart the following thought. My Guru is identical with Guru Rinpoche. He has the same realization and is able to display all the miracles and enlightened qualities that Guru Rinpoche manifested in this life. So we would say that actually in the dark age, then the Vajrayana teaching is all the more powerful. So we're particularly fortunate to have this teaching, and it is something which can be of tremendous value because it can integrate the perceptions of our ordinary existence in a very skillful way. And we should then, even though, of course, the times and the circumstances are different, we should see that the Guru not being different from Padmasambhava, the various ways that the teacher manifests is the way that enlightenment interacts with the circumstances. So given the circumstances of modernity, we will have Vajrayana teachers that manifests according to this time. And that's why we'd want to rejoice in the manner in which the teacher then teaches and manifests in this world. Initially, this thought is generated in an artificial way by repeating it over and over again. However, with intense devotion, a genuine and effortless, with intense conviction, a genuine and effortless devotion will take birth in us. In the same way that the gilding of a Buddha image makes it even more resplendent. The meditation upon our teacher as inseparable from Guru Padmasambhava will make it much easier for us to receive blessings and engender deep devotion. So, of course, as always, it applies in the general Buddhist context that we think about the teaching, its validity, the superiority of the Buddhist teaching compared with all other kinds of sciences. And within this kind of resolution, then having a foundation of deep appreciation what the Buddha teaching is altogether, then a practicing the visualization of the teacher as Guru Padmasambhava or as the deity, then we connect more and more and more with this purity that the teacher is manifesting. And ultimately also because this purity is our purity. The way that the degree to which we could see the teacher as pure, we're connecting with the purity that's innate to ourselves. Throughout the practice of Guru Yoga, the mere recitation of the verses is insufficient, since the main point is the generation of devotion. So we can chant it, but the point is not chanting or mantras or so forth, even though that is something of value. The main point is the devotion. To accomplish this during meditation, the mind should not wander. With the restless thoughts going here and there, the body should remain in the 7-point posture. The mantra recitation should not merely be mouthed, but rather spoken with faith, aroused from the depth of our hearts, from the very marrow of our bones, and with the conviction that our Guru is truly Guru Rinpoche himself. So, truly connecting with the words rather than just repeating them, and truly connecting with the sense of these words, then we sustain this presence of the teacher as being the enlightened one. In general, the performance of any action with the body, speech, and mind in unison will generate greater results. If, for example, we perform the offering of prostrations by putting the body through a series of mechanical movements, while speech engages in conversations, and the mind makes plans for the future or dallies with 1,000 thoughts of the past, then the prostrations will be of little benefit. So it goes without saying, and sometimes you can go places where prostrations is a bit of a social phenomenon, and you do sometimes have prostrators who are having little conversations, even though I would say, in my experience, that is quite rare. Anyway, there has to be the synchronizing body, speech, and mind. And certainly, again, here it applies that the devotion is what we want to be generating and not carried out. The prostration shouldn't be carried out in a distracted state. With the body, we should do prostrations carefully. So there's particular ways that we do the prostrations. With the speech, we should recite the refuge prayer clearly, without interspersing it with ordinary words, ordinary speech. And with the mind, we should concentrate fully on the practice with heartfelt devotion. We should remember that when performing a prostration, placing the hands at the 3 centers of forehead, throat, and heart, we pay homage to the body, speech, and mind of all the Buddhas. So there's a very profound, you could say, significance with this, the Anjali Mudra, like this. This is not something that some of us might think, oh, this has to do with practices that we might not have respect for. but that might just be particular to our little cultural context. And we should understand that certainly with India, Tibet, and many, many places, the putting together of the hands is the gesture of respect. And we can have this respect in terms of the format of the deity externally, as we have it here. But in doing so, also we're paying respect to this basic goodness that is universal and goes beyond self and other. So it's a very, very profound gesture. So we touch our forehead, throat, and heart as ways of paying homage to the body, speech, and mind of all the Buddhas. Khyentse Rinpoche continues, we thus receive the corresponding blessings, which purifies the three poisons and all negativity of our body, speech, and mind. So this has tremendous value, doing this physical gesture. In the Indian tradition, when you say namaste, it actually means I pay homage to the deity. I pay homage to the deity in you. Like in the modern or Western tradition, shake hands, and it's sort of a extending yourself, meeting the other, and welcoming the other. And that's great, and that also is implicit in this. But moreover, in the gesture of Anjali, it's acknowledging the purity, the innate purity, basic in the other person, or in the the purity that exists not only in the other person, but this is something we use universally. It is really the body language of acknowledging enlightenment, acknowledging the sacred. So also Khyentse Rinpoche, he'll say that some of the practices that you find in Tibetan Buddhism could be seen as being cultural. For example, the white scarf. Now, the white scarf is a very, very elegant way of honoring the other, but it's tied up within particular social practices. Whereas the Anjali Mudra, the very body language, like he says, that's not something which we should dismiss as being a cultural practice. And likewise, all the Vajrayana ritual has nothing to do with cultural practice. It is yoga practice. To say that Vajrayana ritual is cultural, that's a bit like saying like Hatha yoga is cultural. Yes, they practice it in India, but the way that you're engaging the body in Hatha yoga is universal and has universal benefit. So similarly, also all the Vajrayana ritual is yoga that connects us with this pure dimension that you could say is innate. So this Anjali Mudra, touching the 3 points of the body, is part of the prostration. When someone engages, Rinpoche says, in a worldly undertaking, in order to succeed, he will coordinate his body, speech, and mind in a harmonious and consistent way. He will be so concerned about the outcome that he will think about it day and night. People do investments and gambling, or they have projects and so forth, and it becomes a big deal. Similarly, if we're able to identify our goals precisely and make ceaseless efforts towards these ends, uniting the activities of body, speech, and mind, there's no doubt that we will succeed swiftly. Otherwise, if we practice in a hypocritical way, like a person who is performing in the presence of a king or dignitary, pretending to be very diligent with the body while the mind entertains no genuine interest, there will not be much progress. It would be a mere exercise that brings no result and leads to nothing. The drawing of a butter lamp on a wall looks like a butter lamp, but it does not dispel darkness. So just going through the motions, saying I'm doing my practice because we get up and we read some sadhana or whatever, unless there is the foundations there, which is the unification of the body, speech, and mind, the body and speech being there, and the mind then in samadhi, the mind not wandering, and the mind imbued with devotion and an understanding of the nature of blessing integrated through the practice. Yes, that has value. So we would say we're the first witness in the sense that it might look like from the outside that we're very serene and practicing, and we could even claim to be practicing. But unless these conditions are there, the real practice has yet to be undertaken. This is why we should coordinate and unify the body, speech, and mind when practicing. Among these three, the mind is the most important, as the body and speech will follow wherever the mind leads. Mind, therefore, should not be allowed to wander. Of course, this is not about us being militant in terms of holding it, but it's really there where we need to have some grounding, some settling. When we start the session, we have the session preliminaries, the expelling of the stale breath, having a posture, and then imbuing the mind with devotion. And so in the Vajrayana, before doing any practice, whether it's Ngondro or sadhana practice, we always start off with certain practices that facilitate this condition. Predominantly the practice of devotion. There are three main parts to the actual practice of Guru Yoga. First, there is the visualization of the object of meditation and the invitation to the jhana sattva to descend. Next is the prayer in 7 branches. Finally, there is the fervent supplication to the Guru and the receiving of the 4 empowerments. So we're going to look at that now. Okay, somebody's saying, advise one book to bring to retreat. Well, how about this one here? I think it's all in there. I would recommend this book. Do we know which 4 verses they were? No, that was just an example. So the Mahasiddhas, they would just receive 4 lines, they would just receive 1 verse of instruction. But of course, they would have been different, and they would have been particular for that particular student. Okay, somebody's giving me an update about what they're doing with their practice. Thank you very much. That sounds good. What does viewing the teacher's deeds in biased way mean? Oh, that's seeing the teacher really as according to our particular agenda. And yeah, was that in the text? It could have been something I said. No, is that in the text? What does it mean to see the teachers in a biased way? Well, it's sort of just seeing the teacher in terms of our particular agenda and seeing the teacher as how far is the teacher from me? Did the teacher talk to me? The teacher's not answering me, and the teacher never notices me. So that's sort of diminishing the teacher. I think that's what might be implicit here. Now the Guru Rinpoche is in the Sandupari Pure Land. This situation is a Nirmanakaya manifestation. Well, we would say Guru Rinpoche is, yes, in the Sandupari Pure Land, and we can interpret that in terms of just conventional relative truth, in which case Guru Rinpoche is somewhere else. But at the same time, Guru Rinpoche is indicative of the continual acting for sentient beings, just like other Buddhas are. And so Guru Rinpoche is still manifesting the Nirmanakaya form, particularly Guru Rinpoche, since we say that Guru Rinpoche possesses the great transfer, that the Guru Rinpoche attained the rainbow body and yet remains in this form. We call this the great transfer. So Guru Rinpoche is in Sandupari, and nowadays the Uluru rock in the middle of Australia has been recognized, I guess, either as Sandupari or some manifestation of Sandupari. So this is where we could go and supplicate Guru Rinpoche. At the same time, also we we are really just viewing the teacher as Guru Rinpoche for the purpose of seeing the teacher's innate purity. So we can see the teacher's Buddha Samantabhadra or Vajradhara, whatever, but it is about continually recollecting the pure nature of the teacher. What would be the sharp faculties for practicing the Vajrayana? I'm pretty sure I don't have those. Now, I think that if we have encountered the Vajrayana teaching, it's okay. There is undoubtedly karmic situation for it. It's based on pure prayers from previous lives, and in fact, at the end of these teachings, we actually aspire that we may meet the teaching, and particularly then aspire to the Vajrayana teachings. So I think we're okay. They're there. The sharpness here is about on the basis of the conditions, accumulation of merit, the purification of obscurations, and particularly devotion, then the quality of blessing and so forth enables us to see what we call the co-emergent wisdom. These conditions are there for, you could say, bodhisattvas on the 8th level and so forth. But at the same time, us ordinary persons also, if we gather these conditions, then the sharp faculties and the foundation for Vajrayana is there, and that is what we're then doing with the practice of with the practice of Ngondro, and particularly Guru Yoga. Which biography of Guru Rinpoche would you recommend us to read? There's an amazing 2-volume translation of Gustave Toussaint, who in the 1930s translated the life of Guru Rinpoche, Dikta Padma, and this was translated in the 1970s into English. It's 2 huge volumes. That's an extraordinary feast of a reading. Mind you, you have some other readings, and I know Eric Pema Kunzang has translated some great biographies of Guru Rinpoche, so they're there. And I would also recommend for modern people to read Crazy Wisdom, because it's crazy wisdom that enables us to connect very much with the life of Padmasambhava, with the reality that we're experiencing in the modern world. So particularly for us in the modern world, reading Crazy Wisdom is very, very helpful in understanding the sense. Otherwise, it's just like, oh, that's far out, that's amazing, but how exactly does that relate? And someone says, oh, this is about Crazy Wisdom. I've heard that Crazy Wisdom of Chogyam Trungpa is a really advanced book, isn't it? No, not at all. It's not an advanced book at all. In fact, it's essential reading for the modern person. There might be some people who think it's advanced because it talks about psychology. And for some people, talking about what's happening inside the mind is advanced. But I don't think so. I think many of us who grew up in the modern world, we are used to talking about what's happening with the mind, and particularly what, of course, is Trungpa Rinpoche's point, is presenting a way of connecting to the reality that we are experiencing right now. Other than that, we might have a very simple kind of faith that just goes, oh, amazing, that happened back then, and that's it. We can't really do much with it. So I think it's very, very, very helpful to have a way to render the extraordinary life of Padmasambhava relevant for our immediate experience. And that is where Trungpa Rinpoche was particularly compassionate, really, in formulating this. Why in the Longten Nyingtik in refuge we visualize the Guru as Vajradhara and not Guru Rinpoche? No, this is Guru Rinpoche. It's a form of Guru Rinpoche. In the In the tradition, we say Guru Rinpoche manifested in different ways according to different circumstances. And this also, if you read the life of Guru Rinpoche, then we will see how Guru Rinpoche manifested sometimes as a prince, sometimes as a yogi, sometimes as a pandita, sometimes as a wrathful heruka, and so forth. So we have in the Guru Rinpoche's life various forms that he manifested. One of these forms is a yogic form that's called Udiyana Vajradhara. And that is what we're visualizing in the Longchen Nyingtik, Ngondro. And also we visualize it in many other places. Tantric Practice in Nyingma by Khetsun Sampo might be another good book. Indeed. Yeah. Tantric Practice in Nyingma is a very good book. And Khetsun Sampo was a great master, very close disciple of Dünjom Rinpoche. And this work is very capably translated by Jeffrey Hopkins. If one experiences nagging, agonizing pain and is trying to do a practice and have synchronized effort, as explained, but the pain keeps nagging, how would you suggest one not be distracted or use the pain while doing recitation or prostration or any practice? Actually, just these days down in Melbourne, I spent a day presenting a work by the third Drupa Tenpa Nyima, which is called Transforming Happiness and Suffering onto the Path of Enlightenment. And if you send me a mail, I'll send you this text, which is very helpful in terms of bringing negativity and pain onto the path. When I visualize the form of Guru Rinpoche and my teacher's human image is separated, how to unite two together. It's easy for me to visualize teacher than Guru Rinpoche in detail. Yeah, well, in that case, then it's all right to visualize the teacher, if that's more easy. But at the same time, then also think that the teacher is, in fact, Guru Rinpoche, so that we don't think of the teacher as being ordinary. Sometimes we say, think of Guru Rinpoche in the appearance, and in essence is the teacher. But I think it's also okay to think of the teacher in the appearance and thinking of the teacher as Guru Rinpoche in essence. The main thing is really that we have this sense that the teacher is more than someone ordinary. I thank my pain for bringing my attention to my breath and my body. Yes, that's a very good one. Thank you. That applies to the previous question about engaging practice while in pain. Yeah. There is within mindfulness movement, there's John Kabat-Zinn, who wrote a book called Full Catastrophe Living. And this is the foundation for Kabat-Zinn's approach, really, with MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, which is also the practice of living with permanent pain. So thank you for that. Yeah. In general, the pith instruction around this, but this needs a lot of substantiation and a bit of salesmanship, I think, is to abandon the thought that suffering should not be happening. You know, we think, oh, I'm suffering, but this shouldn't be happening. That's one thought we need to overcome. And the other one is actually to thank, like it's being said here, to thank these circumstances for enabling the practice on the path. Yeah, so having joy when we're in pain. So these two. But anyway, yeah. Okay. Yeah, by the way, these Wednesday mornings are intended to be a sort of a forum for Ngondro, so it's completely fine that you're bringing up other questions as well. But just to reiterate, that is the sort of one of the purposes with this Wednesday morning. Yeah. Okay, I think we'll start a little bit the next section, which is then the visualization. The place as a Buddha field. In any visualization practice, we should think that everything has been perfect from the beginning that what we visualize is not an intellectual product, but primordially true. Now that itself is a feature of the science of enlightenment. Ordinary science cannot produce this kind of insight. This is a profound insight where we can thank that this exists in the world, that we have someone enlightened that could see this. At the same time, this is also something that we ourselves can see, that how our perceptions are entangled by and driven by and constructed by our particular attitudes. And it's our mind that creates the reality that we have around. It's our mind that creates the solidity. It's our mind that fails to see the dependent or the ultimate empty nature of phenomena. And this is where we need to study the rational teachings of the sutras to understand the hard science of this. Other than that, then it will just sound like it's some sort of gimmick, that we're just going to imagine that things are pure or things are empty and so forth. So when Khyentse Rinpoche says this is primordially true, this is the insight that in reality phenomena are pure. So this is the scope of the logic, that's the foundation for the Vajrayana view. But to apply this also requires then the devotion. But initially there needs to be this understanding that phenomena, they innately are empty, and being innately empty, it means that there's none of the contaminations of phenomena the way that we ordinarily think of them, and hence all appearances are the unity of appearance and emptiness. And this is what we mean with Buddha field, this is what we mean with deity, and that's the foundation of the Vajrayana view. So when we visualize the place as a Buddha field, we are not imagining it, but rather we are applying the visualization as a way to connect with the way that things actually are. For example, if we have jaundice, or if we have an illness, that liver disease, then we're seeing white surfaces as yellow. Now, if somebody comes along and we are having jaundice or this liver illness, then somebody says, "What's that piece of paper? What's the color of that?" We are seeing it as yellow, but we don't say to that person, "The paper is yellow because I see it as yellow." We know that we're seeing it as yellow, and hence we say the paper is white. And we actually, as we're relating to the paper, even though we're seeing it as white, we actually think even though we're seeing it as yellow, we're actually operating as if from the point of view that we know it is actually white. And so similarly also, when we're visualizing, we know that right now we are perceiving things according to our obscured projections, that we know that things, they are innately pure, and yet we are seeing them as impure, just out of our according to our karmic projections. And that's then when we say we visualize the place as a Buddha field. It's like when we understand that the paper actually is white, even though we might see it differently. So that's where we understand that when we're visualizing, this is not intellectually produced or imagined, but it is the primordial truth. This means, Khyentse Rinpoche says, that we perceive the natural perfection of the environment as a Buddha field and the beings therein as celestial beings, Dakas and Dakinis. With intense devotion, we perceive our teacher as inseparable from Guru Padmasambhava. If we maintain constant devotion, it is certain that Guru Rinpoche will always be near us, like our shadow. In order to support and vivify such devotion, we recite the verses of Guru Yoga. So it applies that the place is perfect, and also applies that all beings, all sentient beings, even though they have gotten themselves entangled into a tizzy of samsara, into a state of samsara, their primordial nature is innately pure. And this is where we then apply the visualization of beings as dakas and dakinis, the place as the Buddha field, and our teacher present in the form of Guru Rinpoche. And this, of course, is something that is not about close or distant and so forth. The moment that we're thinking of our teacher, the teacher is there. I'm always quoting my dear friend Eric, who once said to Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, Rinpoche, I realize I actually think more about you when you're not here. and which is such a candid and honest thing. There we were in front of a great Buddha, and of course we'd be thinking all sorts of ordinary distracted thoughts. But at the same time, even if Rinpoche wasn't there, or even if Rinpoche isn't here, then just thinking of Rinpoche is actually far more significant than even if you were in front of the teacher and then thinking about something else. So as such, then the presence of the teacher is unconditional. We can at any time invoke the teacher, and visualization practice is very helpful. The first verse opens with Emaho, an expression of wonder, and continues with the words, the self-appearing, naturally present, perfectly infinite Buddha field. This refers to Guru Rinpoche's paradise, the glorious copper-colored mountain, Sandupari, where beings are naturally free from the poisonous emotions, naturally inclined to practice the Dharma, and where one can see Guru Rinpoche face to face. This is what is called a pure Buddha field. In contrast to this, we have this ordinary place where beings are filled with strong poisons such as craving, anger, pride, jealousy, and miserliness, where they do not behave in accordance with the Dharma, and where they're completely distracted by aims limited to this lifetime. This is called an impure field. But it's important that we realize that the pure field is not somewhere else. It's not like here in Australia or Brazil or America or Europe. That's an impure place, and somewhere else there is a pure field. It's not like that. Innately, the beings with their toxic dispositions are dakas. Innately, the space, the place where we are, despite its appearing according to our, karmic optics, is innately a pure field. So pure and impure is entirely conditioned on whether or not we are looking properly, whether or not we're willing to take off our optics and actually look properly. And that's where we need the science that establishes beyond a speck of doubt that reality in itself is not tangible, not objectifiable, and hence also not, prone to the projections that we put onto them, and that the field of reality itself is ultimately without such tainted projections. And so it makes a big difference how we choose to direct our thoughts. Yesterday, somebody drew my attention to the way that the Japanese scientist Emoto, he saw how water actually takes on the attitude that is projected onto it. So if we're projecting love onto water, then the particles of water, they sort of manifest in amazing ways. Whereas if we project something negative, then correspondingly the water sort of becomes negative. And similarly also all the perceived objects around us, if we're focusing on their negativity, then of course we will experience this impurity. And if we recognize their innate purity, then the experience is completely different. So to break through our habit, we visualize. Rinpoche says, if we visualize the place around us as an impure field, it will not help us. But if we visualize it as a pure Buddha field, it will become so, or to be more exact, we'll come to realize its natural purity. Thus, we should visualize the place as a self-appearing Buddha field encompassing the whole of manifested reality. In the present Guru Yoga, This perfectly arranged Buddha field is the glorious copper-colored mountain, Sangdopari, the paradise of Buddha, of the paradise of Guru Rinpoche. So I think we'll stop at this point, and we'll continue next week. Yeah, no more questions. It looks like. Okay, we'll conclude. Through this virtue, may all beings throughout existence awaken together without a single being left behind. In the pure realm of the luminous essence, the ground of the great perfection, may they remain inseparable from the kayas and wisdoms. Through all our births, wherever we may be born, may we be endowed with the 7 good qualities of the higher realms. As soon as we're born, may we meet with the Dharma and have the freedom to practice it properly. At that time, may we please the holy gurus and practice the Dharma throughout the day and night. Realizing the Dharma and accomplishing its essential meaning, may we cross the ocean of existence in that life. Thoroughly teaching the holy Dharma in this world, may we never tire of accomplishing the benefit of others. By this vast benefit of others, without partiality or bias, may all attain Buddhahood together.